have that faith, you have to have that trust. You have to be willing to we have to be willing to humble ourselves before God and trust Him that He will follow through. And then we will get that rest. So there's a lot of faith that's going on here. And I think this is setting the stage for the rest of Hebrews. This is a build-up, right? The crescendo is, around chapter 10, right? We're going to be building. We're going to get to that place, and there's a big, cymbal clap that will happen here. So this is another step on the way. But he obviously sees it in the hearts of the Christians that he's talking to, or he wouldn't bring this up. It applies to us today too. We just have different things that are attacking us today than what we did then. Who else got to go in? It wasn't just Caleb. Who's the other one? Joshua. Very good. All right. Anybody remember the number of men that died in the wilderness? To one significant digit? 603,548. I thought somebody would have that one at the top of their head in this room. Knowing y'all. So, they fall short of the Canaan rest, which had been promised them, and so, fresh on their mind, he warns them of, again, now in verses 12 through 14, he's going to aware a danger of departing, right? So, first off, he says there, over here, what's the first word? Interesting. And I mean, this is an obvious warning. Beware. Okay. Opens up, beware, brethren, lest there be any of you an evil heart of unbelief. So he's doing a therefore thing, right? There's ties all over this place. There's ties all over Hebrews. Doug and I were talking about this. Was it Doug and I, or was it Darren? Were we talking about this? We were talking about it, right? Make your point, because you made it better than I'm going to make it.
I went through and underlined all the therefores and fors.
Yep.
And because there's a logical argument from the beginning through the end, and then just everything builds to a crescendo when you get to chapter 10.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. So there's a lot of there and therefore bewares in the same kind of thing, right? It's because he's tying it to the previous conversation. It goes boom, now into this. So, hey, remember that story? Yeah, you studied it and you lived it and you know it and you go, yeah, that happened to those people. However, pay attention, right? This applies to you as well. This applies to you as well. By the way, any electrical engineers in the group or computer scientists? Sort of. Anybody ever construct logical arguments, right? Yeah. What's fascinating about that, this is really what this is, right? And the Bible is full of them. I have not done this little exercise. I think this might be fun, actually. Sometime when I have time to sit down and do it. But to actually construct in a logic diagram how all of this ties together. One time, this is a side story, sorry, I got to do this. This is kind of funny. But I told somebody one time I was going to build the systems engineering handbook of the Bible. Well, I was going to do that. And I was going to do the if, then, else, right? The therefores, and tie the whole thing. No, Katie, sorry, I'm embarrassing my daughter. I've embarrassed you so many times in the last 28 years. That's another one, right? And she probably doesn't appreciate that I just, aged her another year. Sorry. Anyway, but if you think about that, right, that's the beauty of the Bible. It's incredibly logical. If you sit and you think about it and you kind of decompose it. Anyway, I digress. Back on the story. When I do that one day, I'll tell everybody. Yeah.
This is almost like in a courtroom, an attorney reasoning and just building
It is.
and building and building and building.
It absolutely is. So, the believer can develop what he calls an evil heart of unbelief. What did he call? Go back to verse 1 or verse 3. What did he call these people? He just said, beware, you can have a heart of, evil heart of unbelief. But how did he open this chapter? What were the words he used? What did he call these folks? Huh?
Holy brethren and partakers.
Holy brethren and partakers, right? Wow. Okay. So that was probably a bit of a wake-up. You said what? And now you said this? Okay. I better pay attention to this. So, logically, this warning then says a believer can become a what? A disbeliever. Again, seems pretty logical and pretty straightforward, and there's a lot of other verses in the Bible that talk about that. It's a whole study in and of itself. Why is that a problem today? What is the central tenet of many Christians today?
Once saved, always saved.
Once saved, always saved. Yep. I don't know if Katie remembers or not. One night I had somebody come and knocking on the door, and was of another denomination. I won't say who. And we got into a discussion, and we got into a once saved, always saved discussion on my doorstep. And we were on it for quite a while. And they finally just said, well, I'll have to go talk to my pastor, and they left. But I had another friend that he called what we would believe greasy grace. In other words, it's not really grace, right? And we had that. But you know what? After a lot of years and a lot of conversations, he finally came around and believed that, yeah, you're right. You can fall back. And I just think it's incredibly logical. Why do you think that once you're perfect, you're going to always be perfect? If that was the case, why are we here, right? Why are we on this planet? Doesn't make any sense. Okay. So we know an unbeliever can become an unbeliever. And he says here that unbelief is produced as what? How is unbelief forged, if you will? Evil heart, but he says through the what? The deceitfulness of sin, is what I'm looking at, right? The deceitfulness of sin. Warning, Will Robinson, okay? Sorry, you under 50s don't know what that means. But it is a flashing warning sign here. Sin is deceitful. Well, we see this all the time, right? And he's making this point out here, whether it be pleasures, whether it be money, whether it be power, whether it be prestige, right? All of these things taken to an extreme, they become passing and they lead to really bad places. Over in Hebrews 11, on the backside of that crescendo, verse 25, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. Over in 1 John 2, and the world is passing away and the lust of it, but he who does the will of the God abides forever. So, again, because of the deceitfulness of sin, it tells us what? How hard is it to become hardened? Yeah, it's really easy. By the way, that applies to everybody in this room. It can be easy. It's an easy thing for all of us to slip into. Yes?
You don't have to become a satanic priest.
No.
And a lot of us will sit back and be kind of arrogant with our righteousness. And the scary thing about the devil is he doesn't make you have to deny Christ. He just makes you have to take him for granted.
It's a great point.
He doesn't make you have to turn around and shoot at another target. He just makes you miss the one that you're aiming for.
Yeah. You only have to be off by a couple of degrees and you're still going to miss a long shot, right? Whatever you do. And I would argue that the deceitfulness of sin actually tries to paint that sin is like satanic worship or a murderer or some, terrible criminal, right? Oh, you got to be that. But if you're a good person, right? Just act good, and yeah, you'll slip sometimes, but for the most part, you're good. Hey, it's going to be okay. You don't have to do anything other than that. Isn't that what the world teaches today? Isn't that what is just everywhere out there? Things to keep in mind. Things to keep in mind. So, because that ultimate consequence, coming back around to what we talked about earlier, is the departing from the living God. I can't imagine departing from the living God. Why would anybody want to depart from the living God? I don't think most people do. I think the vast majority of people, if they understood this, would not rebel against that and go, oh no, I yeah, I want to be a part of a dead God, you know? I mean, people just, I don't think most people wouldn't come to that conclusion. A few would, but most wouldn't. What happens, what's a natural, so we know deceitfulness of sin can lead to unbelief, and then we know what the ultimate consequence is. We start drifting away from God, right? One step at a time. And what's also interesting is God is here. So if you're a believer and you're there, you're with Him. And then if you're drifting, you can be in a big, wide space out and around, right? Beyond. And so we think about some other things that we ought to. I gave a couple examples of things we ought to be aware of. What are some other things we ought to be aware of? Well, something we better be careful of as brothers and sisters if we don't watch it. What can we become? Insulated and legalistic in of ourselves? We have to watch out for that, right? We can start arguing over very small knit issues and making them into substantial issues, and what do? We are allowing the wrong things to creep in, right? And we'll come there. What else?
Becoming complacent in our faith.
Becoming complacent in our face? Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's part of the reason we're here. And that's, it took me a long time to really understand, the benefit of being here and gathered with other Christians. There's a mutual benefit there, right? You're helping others, they're helping you. And it takes a while to really grasp that and understand that. And the only way it really happens is if you get to know each other and you lean on one another and rely on one another. And I think one of the challenges we have in such a rich society is we largely are independent economically, financially, otherwise from each other. Everybody in this room for the most part. That wasn't the case necessarily back then. They were dependent on each other, and that dependence helped draw them together to deal with things and help not fall into drifting away.
We can become desensitized over time. Can wear you down, different things that you go through in life.
Mm-hmm.
Wear on you, and just time in general. And it's like if you take a picture of something and you start to lose contrast, right? If we're not staying in God's Word and really understanding what a contrast it is, this world and the things that are happening in this world, and God's holiness, then we start, it's kind of blurred.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a clear picture, and that's where we can become desensitized over time. Whereas, again, if we're understanding His holiness, and we're more sensitized to it. And it's just like it's whitewashed, it's washed out.
And I think that
The world, your awareness of sin, even.
And I think, Brett, that's a great point. And I think that's another thing we need to do for another, is we see the whitewashing going. It's happened to everybody in this room, right? It's easy for life to wear things down and get to a place where you just don't care. There's a lot of people that get into that mode today. We all know people. We may have been there when we suffer from those things. We need to be able to recognize that and be willing to know that person well enough that you can have that conversation. Because if it's the first time you met them, you're not likely to go up and say, hey, or even if you did say it, are they going to listen? All right, probably not. Doug?
In Romans 1, the Apostle Paul pointed out that the Gentile nation, the very first thing that they did was not being thankful to God. So they quit being thankful for something and take it for granted.
Mm-hmm. Say that one more time. I think it's worth repeating.
When you quit being thankful for something, you start to take it for granted.
We tell our children, when we raise children, particularly little children, and they're early on, it's really easy for them to to take things for granted, right? And we remind them of that point you just made all the time, right? You don't take this for granted, you know,
We
don't.
need to be reminded. That's what he's doing here.
He's absolutely reminding us of that. Don't take it for granted. We need to do the same thing. That's why it's a warning sign. The obvious, hey, I got the axe murderer that came in the back of the room. Okay, yeah, we know that's bad, and we know how to deal with that, right? But that's not how Satan works. I mean, some of that is how he works, but for the most part, no. It's the day-to-day things that creep in, and the things that will come up in our life. Do we become more covetous about things? Do we become legalistic with our brethren? Do we focus on things that bring us together versus things that divide us apart? Become a stumbling block to others, right? We have to be careful of that. So there's several things I think we just need to be careful of and watch for. Ultimately, the solution here is, he gives a warning, but he says what to do. What are we to do? Hold fast in our confidence, exhort one another, right?
Yeah, the appeal of this whole passage, all of you, is to hang on, hold on. It's in verse 6, hold fast our confidence and boast. Boast of our hope firm unto the end. The same thing in verse 14, hold fast the beginning of our assurance firm until the end. Hang on, don't quit. And either case, in one of them, we are the faithful, we are of his house, over his, Christ faithful over his house we are. In verse 14, we are partakers of Christ.
Yep.
Hold on.
Hold on. And he's saying hold on because it also says we are to hold on, so we should exhort one another. How often? Daily. Because the writer knows this is an insidious thing. It's always out there. If we're going to hold on, if we're going to help somebody hold on, they're going to need help. We all need help every day. We need to exhort each other every day in what we're doing. I think this is a clear signal here. This is not some big event that flies in like an asteroid deploying, destroying the earth kind of thing. Whoop, boom, I can see it, it's obvious. It's everyday actions. It's everyday things we do between one another, between ourselves and the world, not getting drawn into the world. And because he says here, while it is called today, lest any be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. So again, hits on the point. Every day we need to be doing that. So
I would dare say take action today. I mean, it's just not tomorrow.
take action today. Good point, right? This is an action-oriented thing, right? Take action today on what we're trying to do.
He also emphasizes in that the fact we need to get to know each other than just when we're here in the assembly.
Absolutely. And so he talks about the words one another, right? All over the place. Think about the words, I'm going to leave this as your thought, right? As we're exhorting one another, all right, here's some ways we can do those things. And I'm not going to read the verses off that go with these, but I can give it to you later if you want them. Have peace with one another. I'm just going to say what ahead of the one another. Love, give preference, receive, admonish, greet, have the same care for, serve, be kind, forgive, speak, be subject to, be truthful with, comfort one, edify, exhort, consider, refuse to speak evil or grumble against. No, we don't ever do that. Confess our trespasses. That's something we don't do very often. Be hospitable. Have fellowship. Those are some good ways we can build those relationships and exhort each other daily. They're small things. They're small things, but it makes sense, right? But those small things, those little steps we do each and every day, the little note we send, the conversation we have, the pat on the back, the hug, whatever that might be, those all add up over time, and they help build up our defenses so that we can continue to have that faith that we have, and we don't trip the condition, right, where we don't have Christ anymore. None of us wants that for one another.
You know, the psalm that he quotes, it's a call to worship God, a calling for the congregation to come into the presence of God. And if we harden our hearts, ultimately, we're basically saying we don't want to be in the presence of God, and really we don't want to be in the presence of his people either. And so you think about the consequence. If we stop being around God's people, we're going to stop desiring to be close to God. I think the reverse is true as well because of that hardness.
I think that's exactly right. And if we can't get along down here together, what in the world gives us not in the world, beyond the world, what gives us any view that we would get along any better in heaven? Right? That's part of what I think he's wanting us to do. He wants us to build these kind of relationships and be able to do these things freely and willingly, because if we're going to be together for all eternity, we got to have these kind of aspects. Thanks, Darren. Okay, everybody. Read chapter 4.
Jordan will have you on Sunday. I won't be in Minnesota. Where it will be cooler.
I read about a chapter.
before, Brother Buck gives us the invitation, start off by singing number 19 in the supplement, Sanctuary. And if you're keeping up in the songbooks, our invitation song will be number 332, I Surrender All. Oh, Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Lord, teach your children to stop the fighting, start uniting, all as one. Let's get together, loving forever, sanctuary for you. You were the one who sent the Savior, heart and soul, for our land. It is you, Lord, who knows all weakness. You refine us with your hand. Oh Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Well, good evening. It's good to see you this evening. If I say the word Australia, what's the first thing that pops in your mind? Australia. I didn't ask you to scream it out. What did you say though, Tammy? Cindy. Anybody think of kangaroos, koala bears, Vegemite sandwiches, the land down under? You think of everything but probably the thing we should think about when we think about Australia.
Crocodile Dundee.
No. Australia was discovered by James Cook in 1770. It was claimed for King George III. 16 years after its discovery, Australia was turned into a penal colony. That's where the British sent all their criminals. It took 8 months by boat to make it to Australia. Of course, many died on that journey. And once they got there, they were in prison. And they had to serve out their sentence. And many did. And then they decided, you know what, this ain't a bad place to live. And so they decided to stay there and start a life there. A life that eventually turned into what we call Australia. The continent, the country, the land down under. Not the penal colony that it once was. If I say the name Paul of the New Testament, what do you think of? Preacher, planter of various congregations, persecuted for his belief and his allegiance to Jesus Christ. But how many was the first thing that popped in your mind was persecutor? Probably none of us, was it? And then what that shows is that people can change. And they can change for the better. The people of Australia changed and made a home for themselves. And Paul changed because of one man's blood. And he wrote about that over in Romans chapter 6. He wrote about the fact that he became a new creature. when he was baptized into Christ. And all the old things about Saul are gone, and we don't think about those today, as we don't think about the criminals that once inhabited the continent of Australia. And if Paul can change, you see, we can change. Because I guarantee you there's no one here that's ever dragged someone off in the middle of the night to throw them into prison because he's a Christian. I guarantee you there's no one here that's ever had someone killed because he named Christ as his Savior. And I guarantee you there's no one here that ever hated somebody as Paul did, Christians. But he changed. And so every time we come together, we offer an invitation, if you want to change and change for the better, to put on Jesus Christ as through his baptism, put on his name, confessing his name before this audience, repenting of your sins, and changing your life today. We can help you do that, make that known to us now as we stand and we sing this song.
Oh, to Jesus I surrender, all to him I freely give. I will ever love and trust him in his presence daily live. I surrender.
Any announcements? You got some? I've got one. I got this on the way to services to a text, and obeying the law, I did not look at it, so let me read this real quick here. There's a meeting starting at New Hope. Yeah, New Hope this Sunday with Tim Norman, who's from New York City. And Becca knows him, right? Yes. They'll be meeting 10 a.m. this Sunday at 3 o'clock, singing, and then Monday through Fridays at 7 p.m. at New Hope. You can go out and join them in the meeting.
So Rebecca Holland asked me to announce that there's going to be a meeting at New Hope. Buck stole my thunder, it's okay, it's all right. No, but anyway, those added to what was announced on Sunday. Tyler Hudson is home sick, so remember Tyler, hopefully nothing too serious. The Revis family will be traveling next week, so keep them in our prayers. Group 7, your group meeting has been moved to this coming Sunday. I think it was originally a week from Sunday, but it's moved to this Sunday at the home of Joe and Leah Carver, and that'll be for lunch, so directly after service. We have some familiar faces, but new members, so Andy and Suzanne has placed membership, and so that's great news, and happy to have them part of the congregation. That's great. I think, got it in my hand, Rob, let's go. Sorry, not Rob. But Blair asked me to announce the team get-together this Sunday at Larry Parvin's house. It's going to be at 5 p.m. And if you'll RSVP to either Blair or Mary Ellen, and if you either plan to be there or if you cannot make it, if you'll just let them know one way or the other, I'd appreciate that. So, and that's really, I think, is it junior high through college age, or? Yes, okay, yeah, so yeah, please let them know if you plan to be there, if you can attend or not, so. That's all the announcements I had. Anybody have anything further? Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I'll be the first to admit that it's the middle of the week. So many times on Wednesday, we're all tired, and we're having busy weeks, we have busy lives. Sometimes it's like, it's a struggle to kind of make yourself come to a midweek Bible study, but I'll be the first to admit also that every time we're here, by the time we leave and hit those doors on the way out, it feels so much better than when we first got here. So, and so thank all of you for being here, and thank you for the encouragement that each one of us gives to one another. So. If there's no further announcements, we'll be leading our closing prayer.
Please bow with me. Lord, thank you for this day, and thank you for letting us be able to come together safely in this place to worship you and to encourage each other. I ask that we take this message out into the world, that we can be a light to others and be encouragements to others throughout this week until our next time to come together. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.